Hello guys, when I made that video about having a crush on my pastor, help me, that video on me crushing on my pastor and what you need to do when you have a crush on your pastor, I got a question from someone, and the question was, what if God tells me that God has told me, or God is telling me that pastor is my husband? That particular question, I'm making this video to answer that particular question. Now, what happens to many Christians is that many Christians now, they want to begin a sudden walk with God, and they want to begin to learn of God. They want to begin to trust God they've never learned to trust. I mean, they want to begin to know God at the point of hearing God for marital settlement. They want to learn how to hear God at the point they need to hear God about who their husband is. They want to trust God at the point where they need to make a decision for marital settlement. Whereas they've not learned to trust God, before that time. And that's the pain of many Christian sisters particularly. And you need to understand that the walk with God, WALK. Your walk with God is what will reflect at every point and every junction of your life, not just maritals, right? You can't trust the God you've never learned to trust before when it's on the point to make that concise marital decision. It can never work out. So that's why you have to walk with God consistently. The same way you will hear God about your academics, same way you will learn to trust God about your academics when it is a thing, it is the same way you have to hear God now as regards to maritals. So it's not anything different. So it's always like maritals is like a continuation of your work with God. It's not supposed to be a beginning of your work with God. Now, that being said and established, back to the question, what if God says pastor is my husband, or God has been telling me that pastor is my husband? I will address this question from the standpoint of, what if God says any brother is your husband? Because now it's beginning to look like pastors are the most anointed. Many believers are anointed. What if God says any Christian brother is your husband, now not just pastor? I believe that for you to be asking this question, you've learned how to hear God and you've heard God in different circumstances and different junctions of your life, like I said earlier. So you will treat that same word of prophecy the same way you treat every word of prophecy you have received from God. Now we understand as Christians now that when God says a word, when He sends forth a word, there's a part that God has a role to play, and you also have a role to play. I will need you to understand the role of going to meet the brother is not your own part to play. That's God's part to play. The same God that has revealed to you that pastor is your husband, we have to reveal to the pastor that you are the pastor's wife. So the role of communicating that particular thing to the brother or to the pastor is not your role. It is God's role. So now when you receive any word of prophecy, aside from maritals, what do you do with the word of prophecy? You go back to God who has given you the word of prophecy and begin to ask Him, how will these things be? Like Mary asked the angel, how shall these things be? God will now begin to reveal to you how it is going to be. He will never tell you to go and meet the person. You now play your own part and begin to trust God and learn to trust God to play His part. Can God speak to you that a brother is your husband when the brother hasn't approached you yet? Yes, it can. Yes, sister, it is not in your place to go and meet the person. Let the person hear God and the person come to meet you. You treat the word of prophecy the same way you treat every single word of prophecy you have ever received from God. You wait on God, you pray to God, you trust in the Lord to bring that particular word of prophecy to pass, and you keep praying until you receive the fulfillment of that prophecy. Once again, it is never in your place to go and meet a brother and ask the brother out. So you have to wait for the Lord to speak to the brother to come and meet you. And once again, Christians, it is not at the point of marital settlement you start learning to walk with God. Start working with God the moment you get saved and the moment you begin to come into the realities of Christ. Marital settlement will come to you easily if you have learned to walk with God and if you have learned to trust God. You will not magically learn how to start hearing God at the point you need to hear God about a husband or about a wife. It is going to be a continuation of how much you've learned of God at that point of making a marital decision. I hope this helps. Shalom. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, follow my channel, follow my page, like this content, and drop your comments.